G'day everyone. Let's take a look at how to create and manage your quotes in Simply Business. So when we click on quotes, what we're going to see is a list of your quotes with some basic information about who the quote is for, where the quote's up to in the status column, and then how much the quote is worth in the total column. We've got some basic options, the ability to create a new quote, whether or not you want to see your archived quotes, and then the ability to search for a specific quote. Now in the tutorial part 3, we looked at how once a sales lead gets to the quote negotiation phase, that would be the point that you would go into quotes and create a quote. So I'm actually going to jump back to leads and have a look at that. So we've got our lead here from the last time called company. That was a cold call, and we've put it in the quote negotiation stage. Now there is 2 ways to create a quote for that lead. One is to go across to quotes and then click on new quote and then fill out all the information. But one of the advantages of Simply Business is that all of the apps interact with each other, so we don't need to do it that way. What we can do is go across to leads, open up our sales lead, and then go down to the actions button, and there's an option here to create a quote. And what that's going to do is take the information from the lead, all the information that we have, and create the quote from that. So if I click create quote, firstly, it's just going to confirm that I do want to create a quote from this lead, and I say yes. But the next thing I'm getting is a warning that no customer has been selected for this lead. Would I like to assign the quote to this lead called company? Now, I don't want to do that because I called it company at the time because I knew it was a company, but now I actually know who the company is. So I'm going to say that the company is ABC Mowers, and I'll save that. And now when I go across to the action and create quote, yes, I want to create a quote. No customer is selected, that's still true. But now, would you like to assign the quote to ABC Mowers? Yes, that's what I want to do. So I'll click yes. What the system will actually do now is a couple of things. Firstly, it's going to create a new customer called ABC Mowers because we didn't have that customer to begin with. It's going to create a quote for that customer, and it's going to assign the quote to that customer. So if I go across to customers, I'll see that new customer there, but we'll cover customers in a different tutorial. So now I have this quote here. It's the first one, 001. The quote name is ABC Mowers. Now that's just been taken from the company name, but I can name this something else. So for example, I'm going to name this logo design because that's what this quote is actually for. In this example, we're going to be designing a logo for this customer and we're setting them a quote for how much that's going to cost. Now we have ABC Mowers as the company, that's fine. Now I want to put in an email address for this quote because I need to send them the quote. So it'll be info@abcmowers.com. That'll do. And we'll put in Jane's last name, which is Jane Smith, very original. We already have her mobile number from the lead, and this reference I'm just going to call logo. I'll give the quote a date, which is today. I'm going to send the quote out today. And we don't need a location, and we do want our terms, which we created back in the first tutorial where we set up our quote terms. So we have valid for 30 days is the terms. I'm just going to save that. Now what I can do here is put in the description of the quote, which will appear on the quote when it's sent out to Jane. And I'm going to say design a logo for your business. So that's all the basic information entered for that quote. It's really the meta information. It's not the quote itself. If I go back to the list, you'll see we've got a draft quote with a $0 value. So what I want to do is go back into this quote and then go across to the items where I can start listing out what I'm quoting. Now it's up to you how much information you put in each item. You can put all of the information to a single item and give a single price, or you can list multiple items and it will tally up the total. So for example, I'm going to start with initial consultation, and that might be $200. And then I'm going to have first draft of logo, and that one is $300. And then second draft is say $150. It shouldn't be too much more work. And then finally, provide final logo. And we'll say that is another $150. And there I have a logo design for $800. So I can save that. Now, each of these items can actually contain multiple lines. So I can describe what's in the initial consultation, 1 hour on-site consultation. And I might even want to make that bold at the top. So it's a bit of a heading. Okay, so it's styled a bit. So now we have initial consultation, 1 hour on-site consultation. Now I'm pretty happy with that, but I just want to have a look and see what it looks like. So I can click on preview to have a look at the quote, and I can see that it's to Jane Smith, ABC Mails. Now I don't have their address in there. That's probably okay at this stage. I've got their email address and mobile phone number. Here's all my company's details. And then this is our description here, design a logo for your business. And then the initial consultation, 1 hour on-site, draft, second draft, final logo. All the prices are correct, $800 total, valid for 30 days. That's the terms that we selected. So that all looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. And so I'm going to go back to the quote tab. And now that I'm happy with it, I'm going to go to actions and mark this as approved. So this is now an approved quote. And now it's waiting to be sent. So what I can do now is hit on actions and click send quote. And then this is going to go to abcmails.com from demo user, and I can send a copy to myself. Now, I always recommend sending a copy of a quote that you send to your customer to yourself. And the reason for that is if the email does end up in their junk box, or when you're following up with them and they say, I didn't get it, you've got a copy in your own email and you can just forward it from there. You can resend it from here as well, but just in case spam filters are getting in the way, you can just send it from your own email. So it's good to have a copy yourself. And then I'll just click send and send that quote off. However, because this is a live system and I don't know whether abcmowers.com actually exists, I don't want to send them this quote. So I'm just going to quickly change that to info@simpli.business so that I get the email just in case, because I don't want some actual company getting our little demo here. And now I can go back to the quotes list and see that my quote is there waiting for the customer to view it. So what I'm going to do now is jump over to my email so you can see the email that your customers are going to receive. So here we see the information that the customer receives, and keep in mind that from the first tutorial, we did go through how to customize these email templates if you're not happy with the way they look. But the subject that we set in the quote obviously appears as the subject. Then we have our company logo. And then this was the message of the body that we had in the email pop-up. And it just says, hi Jane, please find below the link to the quote. Click the link. If you have any questions, let us know. And then kind regards demo user, because that's the name of the user I'm logged in as. Now what Jane can do is click this link, and what she's looking at now is what we call @simpli.business. So this is the front end of Simpli Business that your customers can interact with. And Jane can see the entire quote, and she has the option to accept or decline the quote. Now, this is where the integration with Simpli Business is great, because if Jane accepts the quote, then the sales lead that we created this quote from will automatically go into the sale column. If she declines the quote, then the sales lead that this was created from will automatically go into the no sale column. So you won't need to go in and remember to move it, because it's all linked together, and whatever action Jane takes would dictate what happens to that sales lead. But before I act as Jane and click on accept quote, I'm just going to jump back to Simpli Business to show you that the status of the quote has now changed. So we can see here when we load the list that the status is now viewed. So we know now when looking at this list that Jane has seen the quote. And that means she received the email. We don't have to follow up and wonder, did you get it? We can see that she has got it and it's viewed. If it stays as sent and it's been a couple of days, that's the point where you might want to call and find out, did you get the quote I sent through? Now, what you might find some of your customers do is they get the email, they click the link, they look at the quote, they're happy with the price, and then they either call you or email you and say, yep, I'm happy with that, please go ahead. Now, if they do that, rather than saying, could you please go in and click accept, which you can do if you want, but you don't have to, you can open up the quote again. And in actions, we have a few more actions now. We have the ability to resend the quote, and we have the ability to mark it as accepted or mark it as declined. So if for some reason your customer didn't get the quote, you do have the option to click the resend quote button, and you can send it to a different email address or just resend it to the same address if you want. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to @Simpli Business and accept the quote on Jane's behalf. So I'm back in the quote now, and I click accept quote. So this process is just to confirm that the person really does want to accept the quote, and we want to know who's doing it. So we're not guaranteed that Jane is actually the one who's accepting the quote, because she may have forwarded it on to someone else in her company and they're accepting it. We just want to know who's doing it, so their name, email, and phone number, just so that if there's any dispute, or if they say, well, we didn't accept that quote, you can say, well, it was accepted by, and in this case, we'll say Peter accepts the quote, and he's Peter at, what are they, abcmowers.com, and his phone number is 0411111112. And then Peter accepts the quote. So we have accepted. Thank you for accepting the quote. And that's done. There's no more for the customer to do on this quote in Simply Business. And if I come back to quotes, I can now see that this quote has been accepted. And if I open it, I can also see that it was accepted by Peter, and that's his contact information. So I'm confident that the quote has been accepted, and if there's any dispute, I can find out why Peter accepted it when Jane wasn't happy with it. But otherwise, this quote is done, and we can move to the next phase, which is to start the project. Now, as with most apps within Simply Business, we also have the ability to add files to the quote if we need to for some reason. We can attach some reference files here. This is where we could also upload the logo and then share that, but we'll cover files in a different tutorial. And we can also have a discussion within the team internally. We can discuss whether we're happy with the prices and have our own internal discussion before the quote is sent out. But there will be a full tutorial on how discussions work in another video.